been about 9 months since the first Greenfield Gyutos were released by Bernal Cutlery. I wanted to just take a minute and tell you all a little bit about the production and development that went into making this knife, now that it is an official production model. So initially, Eli and I developed the basic geometry of the knife and handle style, and then we started inquiry into steel types to pick which steels we wanted to use. We knew one would be stainless, as it makes a lot of sense for many cooks, and we didn't want to shut out people who need or prefer stainless. And the second would either be a straight carbon steel or a slower rusting tool steel that sometimes are referred to as semi-stainless steels. We cut a bunch of blanks out of different steels, did 2 heat treatments each, and then ground them. The first test was, of course, how these steels were to grind. You know, what do they feel like on the belts? What were the costs of the steel? You know, that's important, especially in relation to the labor needed to grind them. Sharpening after the grinding and finishing was the final test for the personalities of these steels. We made notes on the sharpenability and then got to work cutting a bunch of mirepoix, loaves of bread, and potatoes. Definitely nothing ambitious food-wise, but lots and lots of repetition at several different edge finishes to see what the cutting feel, edge duration, and edge deformation was like at 2 different finishes, 4,000 and 8,000. The next round was testing blind, not knowing which steels we were using after a new sharpening. It was important to avoid confirmation or hidden bias for or against any steels. After many sessions, a few had floated to the top, and when all considerations were applied, workability, sharpenability, cutting feel, edge deformation, after X amount of use, we had a few contenders. We went with AEBL for the stainless steel and a non-powder metal D2 for the semi-stainless or carbon. There were some carbon steels that we liked, but finally decided that a slow rusting carbon would be good to start with for a stock removal knife. And, we'd save the more reactive carbon steels for forging, is where they really excel. 154 CM was close behind the AEBL for stainless, and A2 was neck and neck with D2. D2 won on edge life and the lack of edge deformation, but A2 did very, very well and was significantly easier to grind. The D2 has actually become a bit of a punchline, although we really did love its performance. This is the steel that we put into production on the first series of the Greenfield Gyutos. For production, we moved away from hand grinding lots and lots of stock off of the blanks and had the hardened steel blanks sent to a facility that does CNC grinding to put in the basic geometry, the taper, etc., minus a little bit for the final shaping that we did with our Kaiten Mizutoishi grinder. That grinder, our Kaiten, is not coarse enough for quickly hogging off lots of steel, and to do so with a 2x72 grinding belt would just be an insane amount of work, eating up lots and lots of time and creating a mini landfill of spent belts. We actually had to do a lot of belt grinding on the D2 knives, as the CNC grinding wheels weren't really capable of taking off the full amount of material from the D2 blades, so we just had to get a basic taper set in and then do a lot of work ourselves. It ended up really eating up a lot of time and belts, and it was kind of crazy. Loved the performance of the D2, but we're moving away from that to the A2 now. While the D2 was a lot of fun to use, it was not a lot of fun to make. So the first run of it will most likely be the last D2 we use in production, unless we figure out another path for it. But with all those dead 36 grinding belts and bitter tears being shed, the A2 prototype was quietly becoming a favorite knife in my kitchen at home. Jobs I could have used a much smaller knife for got the Greenfield. Small zucchini and a clove of garlic and orange. Then citrus went out of season and the Greenfield was still the main knife. It went in for quick touch-ups on an old F-Dick steel every week or so, but the edge kept going and going, even cutting loaves of bread. It was being used almost exclusively on a Hinoki board, but it was a little surprising how well the edge lasted. So, 9 months in, and the A2 Greenfield is now officially the production carbon steel. My personal A2 prototype is getting its second proper resharpening here in the shop, grinding a new edge on it and such. And I'm finished grinding a big batch of the A2 and AEBL Greenfields for our second release. Really excited to release these again and get these into more people's hands, and stay tuned for the update on the next release, which is coming up real soon.